time of Avigdor Miller, alav shalom, he was telling us how it's not enough the person to learn something. He has to internalize it, and that's called dat. True knowledge is where it's part of your bones, it becomes part of your subconscious. You act upon what you learned. It's not enough that it's just in your head. As we know, Chazal tell us, the Esav's head was buried in Marat HaMechpelah, but the rest of his body was not. And that represents how a person can have a disconnect. Disconnect of where in his head he knows a lot of stuff. Esav knew a lot of mitzvot. He had great Torah scholars as his family members. But at the end of the day, he didn't lead to his actions. His actions were still negative and bad. So therefore, his body was disconnected from his head. And we have to have where our bodies are connected to our head. And that's why in the Torah we find many times the da'at is associated with the throat. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu is the ultimate revealer of knowledge of Hashem. And his whole idea was that Shekhinah spoke from his throat. Right? We know that the throat is a very holy place. It connects the head to the body. So therefore, a person's strongest weapon as a Jew is his tongue and his voice. His voice is in his throat. So therefore, when you will know that somebody knows something, you ask him, yeah, you know what this means? He says, yes. So tell me. Explain it to me. When he explains it to you with his voice, that shows he knows it. So therefore, true knowledge is when you know how to explain it and you know how to do it. It's not just enough that you have it in your brain. But this, he extends it even more to another aspect. He says it also applies by tefillah, by prayers. As we're coming to Elul, we're going to say the Slichot. We want to have on Shana, everybody's meticulous to pray nets and want to go and pray the prayers properly. You have to make sure that you have that, you know what you're saying, true knowledge of your prayer and your words of your prayers. He says a person who comes and he thinks that he'll just say the words and he doesn't know the meaning behind it. He's doing like a lip service. He's doing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not going to accomplish anything. You have to realize you have to sit and prepare and know the Sidur. You have to sit and prepare and know the Slichot, because it's not just about yelling and saying the words. It's about the oomph, the meaning, the clarity, the understanding, the heart that's involved. It says you have to serve Hashem with your heart. What is service of the heart? The Gemara learns is prayer. So the heart has to be involved. What is the heart? Avigdor Miller explains the heart represents your mind. Your heart doesn't mean literally your heart that pumps blood. Your heart represents your spiritual mind, your spiritual thoughts. So therefore it says in the Pasuk in Yeshaya, Ya'aki negash ha'am hazeh. And the Yeshaya Navi says, this people approached me, Hashem says. B'pi v'svativ kibduni. With their mouth and lips they honored me. But libo rahak mimeni. But their heart is very far from me. Their mind is very far from me. What does that mean? They come to pray. They sit there and they do the whole service. They go and they come to their earliest prayers. But their lips are there, but their heart is not there. Their mind is not. They're wandering. They don't know what they're saying. Okay, Baruch Hashem, they're coming. But we cannot just stay doing that level. We have to grow. And growing means knowing what we're saying in order that what? We have true knowledge. And then what? When are you going to have real prayers? When you really connect. What's a very powerful sign of you had real prayers? When it's flowing out of your mouth. As the Gemara says that Chaim Mendoza used to know his prayers are accepted when they flow out of his mouth. But more than that, when a person's in the Amidah and he's praying and he's with all his concentration and then he forgets where his surroundings, he forgets where he is. When does a person get so elevated and so involved in his prayers like that? Is when a person knows what he's saying and he has emotion and he's trying to plead to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he's saying, imagine you go to a guy and you say, blah, 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 blah. How can you have emotions with blah, blah, blah? So a person doesn't know what he's saying. How can he have emotion? How can he have his heart involved? How can it be an avodah shebalev? How can it be a service of the heart? So therefore he says, number one place you need to have da'at as well is in your prayers. And the only way you'll have true knowledge of your prayers is if you learn. You have to learn what it means. Yes, take a few minutes every day, go through the slichot, get an English one, prepare in advance, that way you'll come. The tunes are nice, but it's the heart that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And therefore the Sidur, the Amidah, at least the Amidah, critical. There's a beautiful book on the table called Pathway to Prayer. Everybody should have it for the high holidays. There's a Pathway to Prayer of the Amidah. There's Pathway to Prayer for the weekday Amidah. A person should sit with that book, not during the tefillah. During the tefillah it's going to take too long. But just a few minutes every day to learn what are these prayers, because we know the only way we'll get the bracha if we make the vessel. What's the way to make the vessel? Is with our prayers, and it has to be wholesome and from our heart. Baruch